Imagine walking into a hotel that has just spent $7.2 million on a complete renovation. The lobby has pale stone floors. The lights are warm. Every guest room has new carpet, fresh white bedding, and a wall behind the beds that looks perfectly clean. Everything old appears to be gone. Now look behind the hotel's service building. 240 wooden headboards are stacked beside a loading dock. They once stood behind every bed in the hotel. Some have small brass mounting plates. Others have pale rectangles where reading lamps used to be attached. Their dark finish looks heavy and old beside the bright materials going into the renovated rooms. To the hotel, they are taking up valuable space. To Gideon Lap, the Amish builder standing beside the pile, they are not furniture yet. They are questions. Exactly 3 months later, 2 hotel vehicles stop outside Gideon's workshop. It is Wednesday, June 18th, 2025. The morning sun is shining through the open doors, and 60 empty squares cover a large board on the wall. Now look at the object on Gideon's workbench. It is not a bed. It is a narrow maple bench, about 44 inches long and 18 inches high. 4 slats cross the top. 2 old brass holes remain beneath one side rail. Near the rear leg is a small number once hidden against a hotel wall. Beside that finished bench lies a 3-inch piece of maple cut from an old headboard post, and hanging behind Gideon is another bench marked with a large red chalk X. Pay attention to that red mark. The first bench failed. The woman entering the shop is Claire Morgan, the hotel's operations manager. 3 months earlier, she had asked Gideon to remove the headboards as quickly as possible. Now she is carrying a folder containing 60 room numbers. Behind her is Blake Turner, the procurement director who once joked that Gideon might be building a hotel for horses. This time Blake is not laughing. "We need 60, Claire says. Gideon looks at the folder. 60 headboards? Claire turns toward the narrow bench. 60 of those, and we need them before the conference. Why did Gideon cut apart the old posts instead of using the broad panels everyone could see? Why did his first idea break under a pile of sandbags? What did he find beneath one brass plate that the hotel had never noticed? And why would a business that had paid to remove 240 headboards return only 3 months later, asking for 60 of them back? In this story, you will see how Gideon separated useful wood from material that should never return to a home. You will see the mistake that changed the entire design. You will watch 5 extra pieces disappear while a hotel deadline moves closer. Then you will see what happened when the same man who mocked the pile inspected the finished rooms. If you enjoy stories about ordinary people finding value where others stopped looking, subscribe to the channel now. Stay until the end, because the biggest surprise is not that Gideon found another use for an old headboard. It is the one part of the headboard he refused to trust. But to understand that decision, we need to return to Monday, March 17th, one day before the pile reached his farm. Gideon Lap was 51 years old and lived outside Lidditz, Pennsylvania, on a farm bordered by a narrow creek and 2 rows of sugar maples. His workshop stood behind the house. It was 46 feet long, with high windows on the north side and a wide pair of doors facing the lane. Wooden patterns hung from nails above the benches. Hand planes rested on one shelf. Clamps, braces, saws, and folding rulers had their own places. The shop did not look like a furniture showroom. It looked like a place where every piece had to explain why it deserved space. Gideon worked with his 24-year-old son, Jonas. Jonas had his father's quiet manner, but he asked questions more quickly. If a board was kept, Jonas wanted to know what it would become. If a joint was hidden, he wanted to know how it would be tested. Gideon's wife, Mary, was 49. She kept the written orders, answered correspondence, and knew which customers could wait and which ones needed a straight answer before sunset. Gideon's father, Daniel Lap, was 74 and still visited the shop twice a week. Daniel no longer lifted heavy frames. He sat near the north windows, sharpened tools, and noticed mistakes before younger eyes did. Gideon had not studied at a design school. At 10, he learned to identify maple by its pale, even grain. At 13, he learned that oak could look straight on one face and still pull a blade sideways. At 17, he helped Daniel build a barn stair strong enough for men carrying grain sacks. Daniel taught him to look beyond color and scratches. A finish tells you where wood has been, he would say. The end grain tells you what it can still do. For years, Gideon believed he understood that lesson. Then, 11 years before the hotel called, he made a mistake that changed the way he handled every reclaimed board. A local school had removed old maple bleachers from its gym. Gideon bought several straight sections and used them to build 12 benches for a community hall. The wood looked excellent. It was thick, dry, and already worn smooth by decades of use. Gideon checked the faces, trimmed the damaged ends, and built the benches quickly. During a community supper, one hidden split opened inside a side rail. The bench dropped less than 2 inches before the other joints held. No one was hurt, but 3 people stood up in shock while a room full of neighbors turned toward Gideon's work. He could have repaired that one rail and blamed the old bleacher. Instead, he returned every payment, carried all 12 benches back to the shop, and rebuilt them. The work cost him 2 months. The embarrassment lasted longer. Now look above Gideon's main bench. A broken maple rail hangs from 2 pegs. A dark line crosses its end. From the outside, the rail had looked solid. Inside, the split had traveled almost 8 inches along the grain. Gideon kept it where he could see it. Not because old wood was bad, because old wood did not become safe simply because someone told a beautiful story about it. That was the man Claire Morgan called at 4:10 on Monday afternoon. The business telephone was in a small office shared by Gideon's shop and a neighboring carriage repair business. Mary took the first message, then walked across the lane. "A hotel manager wants an answer before 5, she said. Gideon wiped the dust from his hands and returned the call. Claire spoke quickly. The Lancaster Ridge Hotel was 7 miles away. It had 120 double queen rooms, with 2 beds in each room. During a renovation in 2005, the owners had installed one wall-mounted headboard behind every bed. 2 beds per room. 120 rooms. That is how a hotel ends up with 240 matching pieces that seem useless on the same day. The new renovation was already underway. Contractors were installing lighter wall panels behind the beds. The old headboards had been moved to a service area, but the hotel needed that space for flooring and bathroom fixtures arriving later in the week. Disposal would cost nearly $4,800. "I was told you sometimes work with old material," Claire said. "Sometimes. You can have all of it if you remove it tomorrow." "What are the headboards made from?" "Wood. Dark wood." Gideon waited. Claire understood that her answer was not enough. "Some are maple. Some may be oak. The renovation file is 20 years old. I can send photographs." "Any water damage?" "A few were stored near a leaking wall. Most came directly from guest rooms." "Any upholstered panels?" 20 or 30. "I will inspect before I keep anything." "The contractor needs the dock empty. Then he can place the headboards in rows instead of a pile." Claire paused. "Will you take them or not?" "I will look at everyone. What fails stays your responsibility. What passes can come to my shop." That was not the quick yes Claire wanted, but it was the only yes Gideon would give. At 7:40 the next morning, Gideon, Jonas, and Daniel reached the hotel in 2 flat wagons pulled by a team of draft horses. A hired truck arranged by Claire would carry the approved stacks to Gideon's farm after inspection. Now look at the loading area from above. The headboards are not in rows. They are leaning against one another in 6 rough stacks. Brass brackets catch the morning light. Dark panels hide pale maple edges. Several upholstered units are already wet along the bottom because they were placed directly on the pavement. Marcus Dale, the 37-year-old hauling contractor, points toward the pile. "There is your free hotel," he says. "All you need now are 240 beds." Jonas looks at his father. Gideon does not answer the joke. He removes one headboard from the first stack and turns it around. This is the side guests never saw. 2 heavy posts run down the edges. A long maple rail crosses the top. Another crosses the bottom. Between them is a broad decorative panel that looks solid from a distance. Near the mounting bracket is a small brass inventory plate. Gideon wipes it with his thumb. Lancaster Ridge, Model M6, installed 2005. Below the plate, the end grain of the post is pale and tight. Blake Turner walks out of the service door wearing a clean gray jacket and polished work shoes. At 46, he manages purchasing for the hotel and has spent months trying to make every visible surface in the renovated rooms match. "Those were expensive when we bought them," Blake says. "Now they make the rooms look 20 years older." Gideon studies the joint between the post and the top rail. "How much weight did they carry?" he asks. Blake laughs. "They are headboards. They carried pillows." "Then you do not know." "I know no guest wants one behind a bed." "I do not have a hotel." Marcus points toward the wagons. "Maybe he is building one for the horses." Blake smiles. Gideon turns the headboard again and looks at the lower rail. "No," he says. "A horse would test it before lying down." Daniel hides a smile beneath his beard. Claire steps between the men and checks her watch. "How long will this take?" Gideon places a piece of white chalk on the pavement. "As long as the wood requires." Claire signs the transfer list for all 240 headboards. The hotel has given them to Gideon, but he has not promised to use everyone. The headboards are loaded in 6 groups of 40 with thin spacers between them. The hired truck reaches Gideon's farm shortly after noon. Marcus wants to raise the bed and slide everything onto the ground. Gideon stops him. "One group at a time. They came from a wall, not a museum. And they will enter my ledger before they enter my shop." Marcus shakes his head but lowers the first stack slowly. Mary writes the source and total count in a large book. Jonas places each headboard on narrow wooden strips so air can move beneath it. Daniel leaves 6 inches between the 6 groups. The process takes until sunset. That evening, the shed and shop contain 240 objects that are too large to ignore and too uncertain to use. Gideon has paid nothing for the pile, but free material has already taken a full day, hired transportation, most of his storage space, and the attention of 4 people. This is the cost that does not appear in the title. The next morning, Gideon draws 3 large letters on the floor. A means the headboard may contain enough sound hardwood for a complete project. B means parts only. C means it should leave the property through proper disposal. Jonas records the model number and room group from every brass plate. Daniel checks the lower ends of the posts with an awl. Gideon removes 1 bracket from each design family so he can see what the metal has hidden. This part matters. Reclaimed wood is not valuable merely because it is old. A dry, solid rail can be useful for decades. A swollen composite panel, a piece carrying a strong odor, or a post split through its main joint can create more trouble than value. Gideon is not trying to save everything. He is trying to avoid confusing waste with wood. Now watch the 3 rows grow. 24 headboards contain particle board beneath a thin decorative surface. Gideon places them in row C. 11 show water damage or hold an odor that does not leave when the surface is exposed. They also go to C. 4 have splits running through lengths that would need to carry force. They join the rejected row. 39 headboards receive red tags. A disposal service collects them later that week. 201 receive white chalk numbers and enter Gideon's inspection ledger. Mary looks at the rejected group. "The hotel gave us all of them." "Yes," Gideon says. "It did not make all of them useful." The next part begins with the hardware. Now look at the back of 1 maple headboard. 4 mounting brackets are visible. 2 screws come out easily. 1 breaks below the surface. The 4th has been replaced with a longer steel screw that enters the post at an angle. If Gideon cuts through that screw later, he can damage a blade, tear the wood, or leave metal inside a joint. Jonas passes a small handheld detector across every future cut line and marks hidden metal with blue chalk. They remove brackets, screws, lamp plates, staples, and plastic clips. Under several brackets, narrow cracks appear. 9 headboards have cracks that travel too far into the rails. 5 more have damaged joints that would remove the useful length Gideon hoped to keep. 14 additional pieces leave the complete project group. 187 remain. Then Gideon waits. For 3 weeks, he does not cut the long pieces. The headboards came from climate-controlled rooms, a service corridor, and an outdoor loading area. If their moisture changes, some rails may move. A straight board on the first day may reveal a twist after air reaches both sides. Every morning, Jonas places a straight edge across selected rails and writes the result in the ledger. On the 6th day, one oak headboard develops a shallow bow. On the 11th, a cherry post twists enough to lift one corner from the floor. On the 18th, another lower rail opens along an old glue line. Those three are moved to the parts group. On April 8th, 184 stable headboards remain. Now look at them by color and shape. 82 have arched oak tops. 67 are square maple units from the hotel's north wing. 35 have narrow cherry rails and vertical details. The numbers do not match the original groups because damage did not choose one style evenly. The square maple group interests Gideon most. Each headboard has two posts, almost 50 inches long. The top and bottom rails are solid maple. The broad center panel appears to be maple too, but its edge is covered by trim. Gideon places one on two low supports. A hall bench, Jonas says. Perhaps. The panel is already wide enough for a seat. That seems obvious. It also becomes Gideon's first mistake. He removes the mounting plates, cuts the headboard down to 44 inches, and turns the broad decorative panel from vertical to horizontal. He adds 4 legs beneath it and a narrow rail across the front. From the doorway, the result looks finished. The dark maple panel forms a wide seat. The old top rail has become a decorative back. 2 brass holes remain near one side. Mary runs her hand across the surface. It looks like it always wanted to be a bench, she says. Gideon does not smile. He kneels and looks underneath. The legs are strong. The side rails are new, but the broad seat panel is carrying the load, and Gideon still does not know what lies inside it. Daniel looks toward the broken bleacher rail hanging on the wall. "How will you ask it?" he says. Gideon brings out 6 canvas sacks filled with dry sand. Jonas places the first 2 on the seat. 100 pounds. Nothing moves. 2 more sacks bring the weight to 200. The panel bends slightly at the center. Gideon lowers his face until his eyes are level with the edge. 1 more. Slowly. At 250 pounds, a pale line appears beneath the finish. Jonas reaches for the sack. Before he can remove it, the center panel cracks. The legs remain standing. The rails remain joined, but the broad surface drops almost an inch in the middle. Now look closely at the broken edge. The panel is not a thick piece of maple. It is a thin maple surface over a lighter core. It was strong enough to stand vertically behind a mattress. It was never meant to hold weight horizontally. Gideon had trusted the largest part because it looked like the most useful part. Marcus happens to arrive that afternoon with another delivery for the neighboring repair shop. He sees the broken bench outside Gideon's doors. "That hotel for horses did not last long," he says. Jonas turns toward him, but Gideon raises one hand. He takes red chalk and draws a large X across the underside of the failed seat. Then he hangs the entire prototype on the shop wall beneath the broken bleacher rail. "Why keep both?" Jonas asks after Marcus leaves. "The first one reminds me to inspect old wood," Gideon says. "The second reminds me that inspection does not excuse a poor design." For 2 days, he does nothing with the maple group. He works on a farm table, repairs a pantry door, and helps Daniel sharpen a brace bit. But each time he crosses the shop, he looks at the cut end of the failed headboard. On the 3rd morning, he removes the decorative panel completely. Now keep your eyes on the screen. The headboard is no longer one large object. It is 2 long posts. It is 1 upper rail and 1 lower rail. It is a broad panel that should not carry a person. It is 4 brackets, 12 screws, 2 trim strips, and 1 brass plate. Gideon places the pieces on the floor with space between them. Then he lifts 1 post and turns it end over end. The post is nearly 50 inches long, cut into 2 shorter sections. It can become 4 bench legs. The 2 solid rails can become the front and back supports. New ash can form the short side rails and the slats on top. Those new pieces will carry the suitcase or the person sitting down to tie a shoe. The old decorative panel can be cut into a lower shelf and a narrow front detail, where it adds history without carrying the main load. The difference is simple. In the first prototype, the weakest-looking structure was hidden beneath the largest visible surface. In the second, the load travels from new ash slats into solid maple rails, through 4 short legs, and down to the floor. Think of a cardboard box on a wooden table. The box may cover most of what you see, but the table carries the weight. Gideon had tried to make the box become the table. Now he uses the old headboard only where its wood can honestly do the job. Jonas studies the pieces. It will not look like a headboard. That is not a problem. Then what are we building? Gideon points to the 44-inch rails. A place for a suitcase. The second prototype takes 4 days. Gideon cuts each post into 2 legs, but he avoids the old mounting holes. Jonas forms new joints in the solid rails. Daniel checks the shoulders with the edge of a square. The ash slats are spaced closely enough to hold a small bag and strong enough for an adult to sit briefly. The decorative panel becomes a narrow shelf beneath the top. Gideon does not erase every sign of the former use. 2 brass holes remain on the inside of the rear rail. The inventory plate is cleaned and fastened beneath the shelf, where anyone who bends down can read where the wood came from. When the bench is complete, Jonas brings the sandbags again. 200 pounds. The slats remain straight. 300. No joint moves. 400. Gideon slides a thin paper strip beneath each foot. None lifts from the floor. He leaves the weight in place for 1 hour. When the sacks are removed, the top returns to the same line. Daniel touches one of the old maple legs. Now the wood knows what you are asking. Gideon writes the date and the tested weight beneath the shelf. He does not call the hotel. He does not tell Marcus. And he does not claim that 240 headboards have become 240 perfect benches. He has one successful design. That is all. If we have ever watched something useful get called worthless simply because it was no longer fashionable, subscribe to the channel. Gideon has solved the first problem, but no one outside his family has paid for the answer yet. And the next person to inspect the bench is determined to prove that no modern customer will want it. His name is Owen Price. Owen is 56 and owns a furniture store on the edge of town. His showroom is filled with matching bedroom sets, polished dining tables, and benches ordered by catalog number. He visits Gideon's shop on May 2nd to collect 2 repaired chair frames. The luggage bench stands near the open doors. Owen notices the brass holes first. "You missed something," he says. "No." "Then why are the holes still there? They do not weaken the rail." Owen bends to look beneath the shelf and sees the hotel plate. "Lancaster Ridge gave you these?" 240. Owen straightens slowly. "You took all of them?" "I kept 184 after inspection." "To make luggage benches?" "To learn what each group can become." Owen presses both hands on the top slats. Customers who want new furniture do not want hotel scratches. Some do not. And customers who want antiques do not want something cut apart last month. Then it is good that I did not call it an antique. Owen walks around the bench again. "What do you call it?" "Useful." Owen laughs once. "Useful is not a style. It is a reason." That exchange gives Jonas an idea. 2 weeks later, on Saturday, May 17th, he takes the bench to a local home and garden market. He places it beside 2 new mudroom units so visitors can compare the work. There is no long explanation on the display. One card says only, "Former hotel headboard. Tested luggage bench." Now watch where people place their hands. They do not begin with the brass holes. They press the ash slats. They sit long enough to tie a shoe. They slide a market bag onto the lower shelf. Then they bend down and read the old inventory plate. The history becomes interesting only after the bench proves useful. By noon, 11 people have asked the price. One of them is Emma Rhodes, 61, owner of the Willow Creek Inn. Her inn has 14 rooms and 3 small cottages. Guests often arrive with heavy bags, and 4 of her folding luggage racks have broken during the past year. "Can this hold a large suitcase?" she asks. Gideon points beneath the shelf. 400 pounds remained on the test piece for 1 hour. I do not recommend using furniture carelessly, but a suitcase is not its greatest problem. Emma looks at the old plate. "Will they all carry the hotel name?" "Only if the plate is present and sound." "I want 6. Jonas looks at Gideon. 6 is not 60, but it is the first proof that the design answers a real problem outside their shop. Emma chooses 3 maple headboards from a different finish group and 3 arched oak pieces. Gideon adjusts the legs to the same height and keeps the tops at the same width. The benches do not look identical, but they perform the same job. He charges $320 for each one. The price includes inspection, new ash, disassembly, joinery, finishing, testing, and delivery. They are not free benches made from free wood. They are paid work built around material the hotel had stopped valuing. On June 5th, the 6 benches enter Willow Creek Inn. Emma places 2 in the main building, 1 in each cottage, and 1 near the back entrance where wedding guests leave their bags before rooms are ready. For the first week, nothing dramatic happens. That matters too. Suitcases stay off beds. Folding racks stop collapsing. Guests use the lower shelf for shoes. One family asks Emma where she bought the bench in their cottage. She places Gideon's card in the front desk drawer. Meanwhile, the $7.2 million renovation at Lancaster Ridge reaches its opening weekend. The new rooms photograph beautifully. Now look at one of them. 2 queen beds stand against a pale wall. A narrow shelf is fixed beneath the television. A small desk occupies one corner. There is open floor near the window because the designers wanted every room to feel larger. Something is missing. The old metal luggage racks were removed from the room package. New upholstered luggage benches had been ordered, but the supplier delayed them 16 weeks. Blake decided the rooms could open without them. Guests found their own solution. They placed suitcases on the white beds. They opened bags on the carpet. They balanced cases across desk chairs. During the first 2 weekends, housekeeping records 47 stained duvet covers and 18 damaged desk chairs. The front desk receives 31 complaints or requests involving luggage space. The numbers are not large enough to close the hotel. They are large enough to make every full weekend harder. Claire asks Blake for temporary folding racks. The available commercial units will not arrive for 5 weeks. The matching upholstered benches remain 16 weeks away and cost $720 each. The hotel has a regional sales conference arriving July 10th. More than 900 guests and visitors are expected across 4 days. Claire needs a solution before then. On June 12th, she drives to Willow Creek Inn for a meeting with Emma about overflow rooms. While they speak near the front desk, Claire notices a maple bench under the window. At first, she sees only the shape. Then she sees 2 brass mounting holes on the inside rail. Now look beneath the lower shelf with her. The small plate reads, Lancaster Ridge, Model M6 installed 2005. Claire touches the edge. Where did you get this? Emma points to Gideon's card. An Amish builder outside Lidditz. He made 6 for us. From a headboard? That is what the plate says. Claire sits on the bench and looks at the 4 short legs. The long posts she ordered removed are now beneath her. The rails that once framed an outdated wall panel are supporting a suitcase. The broad panel itself is on the lower shelf, carrying almost nothing. That is when she understands what Gideon saw. He did not see 240 finished objects waiting for another bed. He saw long, seasoned parts waiting for a different load. 6 days later, exactly 3 months after the delivery, Claire and Blake enter Gideon's shop. This is the moment from the beginning. 60 blank squares cover the board, but Gideon has not agreed to fill them. Claire places the conference schedule on the bench. We need 60 by July 7th, she says. That is 19 days. Installation begins Monday morning. Blake places a supplier quotation beside the schedule. 60 commercial benches at $720 each would cost $43,200, not including expedited freight. We will pay $335 for each finished bench, Claire says. $20,100 total. Half when you accept. Gideon does not touch the check. Why 60? 15 rooms on each of 4 floors. The rooms used by the conference groups. If they work, we will discuss the rest later. You had 240 headboards, Blake answers before Claire can. We gave them to you. We are buying benches, not taking property back. That is not what I asked. Claire understands. We want the square maple design, she says. It fits the renovated rooms better than the arched oak. Gideon turns toward the north wall. The matching maple group began with 72 headboards. 5 failed inspection or acclimation. One was consumed by the broken prototype. One became the successful sample standing between them. 65 complete raw sets remain. The hotel needs 60. 5 headboards are the entire margin. Gideon places 5 small maple blocks above the 60 empty squares. These are not 5 extra benches, he says. They are 5 chances to discover a problem before a guest does. Blake looks at the stable rows. You have more than 100 others. Not in the model you selected. Wood is wood. Gideon glances at the red X on the wall. That sentence built the first failure. Claire looks at the production board. Can you do it? Gideon asks for the final room dimensions, carpet height, required bench width, and delivery path. He asks whether the hotel accepts visible old mounting holes on inside surfaces. He asks whether every unit may carry its original inventory plate beneath the shelf. Blake begins to object. Claire stops him. If the marks are clean and the structure passes your test, yes. Gideon studies the calendar. We begin tomorrow. If the wood falls below 60 sound sets, I tell you the same day. I will not replace a failed maple part with a dark oak part and hide it under stain. We need 60, Blake says. Then you need 60 honest ones. Claire signs the order. The next morning, June 19th, Jonas draws 60 squares in 4 rows of 15. Each row represents 1 hotel floor. Each square has 4 checks. Disassembled, joints passed, load passed, finish passed. No square can be filled from memory. Every check requires a completed inspection. Gideon divides the work into repeating groups of 10. Jonas removes hardware and records hidden metal. Daniel checks the old rails after they are separated. Gideon cuts the posts only after the safe lines are marked. Mary records each brass plate and matches it to a finished bench number. Watch the 5 small blocks above the board. On day 3, Jonas finds a long steel screw buried inside a post exactly where the new joint must be cut. The surrounding wood tears when the screw is removed. The first block comes down. Margin 4. On day 6, a lower rail separates along a crack that had remained hidden beneath dark filler. The second block comes down. Margin 3. Blake visits that afternoon. He sees 2 rejected headboards leaning beneath the failed prototype. Could you shorten the bench and use the good section? Not to the dimensions you approved. Could you fill the crack? Filler can improve a surface. It cannot carry a hotel guest. Blake looks at the 43 empty load boxes still waiting on the board. You are throwing away material we need. No, I am finding the part you never had. And what is that? The failure before the room opens. Blake leaves without answering. On day 9, a third post reveals 2 deep holes hidden beneath a brass cap. The old hotel installer had moved a bracket and covered the first attempt. The third block comes down. Margin 2. On day 11, a rail that looked dry releases a strong cleaning odor when Gideon opens the old joint. He removes that set from the hotel order rather than sealing the odor inside new furniture. The fourth block comes down. Margin 1. 61 matching sets remain for 60 benches. There are 7 days before installation, and the final extra headboard is about to fail for a reason no one can see while it is standing still. On day 14, the last extra set becomes a finished bench. Every joint looks clean, the feet stand flat. The brass plate is secure beneath the shelf. Jonas places the sandbags on top. At 200 pounds, nothing changes. At 300, one rear leg shifts less than the width of a pencil line. Gideon removes the bags and checks the joint. The old post contains a diagonal split that opens only when force travels down from the rail. The bench can stand in a room and look perfect. It cannot pass the test. Gideon marks the underside with red chalk. The fifth block comes down. Margin 0. 60 sound sets remain for 60 promised benches. Now the production board matters more than the calendar. One hidden crack, one damaged joint, or one careless cut will reduce the order. On day 15, Blake returns with a hotel designer. 52 benches are assembled in rows. 8 remain in parts. The designer notices that some old maple rails are slightly darker than others. They need to look identical, Blake says. Gideon places 2 benches beside each other. Their dimensions match. Their ash tops match. Their height and strength match, but 20 years of hotel light have left small differences in the maple. I can make the sizes equal, Gideon says. I can make the joints equal. I will not bury every old surface beneath a dark coat just to make history pretend it happened evenly. Our rooms were designed to match. Then place similar tones on the same floor. The designer walks past the 52 assembled benches, then compares them with the prepared maple parts for the final 8. She defines 4 tone groups and assigns 15 bench numbers to each floor. The differences that looked random now become a gentle change from one floor to the next. Claire approves the arrangement. Blake looks beneath one shelf and sees the old room plate. Guests may think we forgot to remove this. Then tell them why it is there, Claire says. For the first time, the manager who rushed the headboards out of the hotel is protecting the marks that prove where they came from. On July 6th, every square on Jonas's board contains 4 checks, but Gideon performs one final test. Look at the workshop floor. 60 benches stand in 4 straight rows. A sandbag rests on every top. Jonas checks the feet. Daniel checks the joints. Mary compares each inventory plate with the delivery list. Gideon walks past every unit with the broken bleacher rail in his memory and the failed headboard bench on the wall behind him. Nothing shifts. Nothing opens. Nothing is hidden by a promise. At 6:20 that evening, Gideon fills the final box. The hotel did not receive 60 benches because every old headboard was valuable. It received 60 because Gideon rejected the pieces that were not. At 7 the next morning, the first delivery reaches Lancaster Ridge. Now compare the loading dock with the image from March. 3 months earlier, the headboards leaned in dark stacks while workers tried to clear the space. Now 60 narrow benches enter through the front service corridor one at a time. 15 go to each of 4 floors. Their old maple legs stand on new carpet. Their ash slats wait beneath the windows or beside the dressers. The broad panels that once appeared most important now serve quietly as lower shelves. Not one headboard returns behind a bed. On July 10th, the conference begins. Guests place rolling cases on the benches. They sit to change shoes. They slide small bags onto the shelves. Several bend down and notice the brass plates. The front desk receives questions about the furniture, but no complaints about missing luggage space from those 60 rooms. During the first 2 busy weekends after installation, the 60 selected rooms record only 6 stained duvet covers and no desk chairs damaged by suitcases. The numbers do not turn old wood into a miracle. They prove that the new purpose solves the problem it was built to solve. Blake visits one room while housekeeping, is preparing it for the next guest. A large suitcase rests on the bench beneath the window. He bends and reads the plate. The number belongs to a headboard that once stood in another room on the same floor. Later that afternoon, Blake drives to Gideon's shop. Marcus is there collecting a repaired wagon panel. Owen Price has also stopped by to examine one of the arched oak prototypes now waiting near the door. The 3 men who doubted the pile are standing in the same place. Blake looks at the red X on the failed bench. "You kept that one too?" It explains the others. Blake runs his thumb across the broken panel. "I thought you took those headboards because you did not understand what they were worth." Gideon places the 3-inch maple block beside the brass plate. "I took them because worth does not have to remain where it started." Marcus looks toward the stable rows still waiting in the shed. "So are you building the rest into hotel benches?" "Only if the wood and the need agree." Owen studies the luggage bench near the doors. "Useful may be a style after all," he says. Gideon shakes his head. "No, it is still a reason." During the next 4 months, Gideon accepts orders for mudroom benches, window seats, and entry storage built from the remaining sound groups. He rejects more pieces as new cuts reveal old damage. Some rails become repair stock. Composite panels and unsafe parts return to proper disposal. He never claims that age makes wood better. He claims only that a discarded name should not decide the future of a sound part. Now take one final look around the shop. Above the main bench hangs the broken rail from Gideon's old community hall mistake. Beneath it hangs the first failed headboard prototype with the red X. On the workbench lies the small maple block that revealed the solid post. In the ledger are 240 starting numbers, 184 stable pieces, 60 hotel benches, and every rejection that protected the result. And 7 miles away, hotel guests are placing their suitcases on furniture made from headboards the hotel paid to remove. If this story changed the way you look at what gets thrown away during an ordinary renovation, subscribe to the channel. Then tell us in the comments, would you have seen 240 outdated headboards or 240 unanswered questions? The hotel removed the headboards because they no longer belonged behind its beds. Gideon proved that usefulness does not have to stay where it began.